I could see the storm gaining momentum. The world suddenly turned dark as the dark clouds obstructed the sun out of view. I was alone in the jungle. I couldn't help but think of how foolish I had been, venturing into the jungle without checking the weather forecast. It was a costly mistake. Home was a long way away and I had to walk all 13 miles back to safety. The clouds crashed loudly and I dropped the bag of pine cones I had been gathering to make incense. I picked them up again. I looked on bravely at the sparkling lightning that burst brightly through the darkness. But inside I was crying like a 5-year-old boy. There was no way I was going to make it back home right now, I realized, looking at the fat raindrops as they drenched the world around me. I wanted to huddle under a tree branch for protection, but I had read somewhere that lightning is attracted to trees, so I thought not to risk it. As I trudged through the pouring rain, the jungle's once familiar paths became treacherous and slippery. My heart raced with every thunderclap, each one echoing through the dense canopy. Lightning continued to streak across the sky, illuminating the wild, dark world around me. My vision was blurred by the relentless downpour, and I stumbled over tree roots and vines. The rain-soaked bag of pine cones had been discarded, no longer important. The wind howled, whipping my drenched clothes around me like a shroud. With each step, the world became a little hazier, a little more surreal. Then, as if fate itself had dealt the final blow, I lost my footing and tumbled to the ground, my head striking a jagged rock. Pain exploded inside my skull, and the world spun violently. I clutched my head, trying to steady myself, but it was no use. My vision began to fade, and I could feel the cold rain soaking into the earth beneath me. As I lay there, teetering on the edge of consciousness, my life began to replay before my eyes. Images, moments, and memories flashed by, each one carrying its own weight of significance. And in that surreal, dreamlike state, I saw the small black puppy once again. I had seen the poor little thing being maliciously run over by a car last week, as he crossed the street with his mom and sister. The driver speeded away as I rushed over to the puppy. I wanted to take him to the vet, but I could tell he was breathing his last. I sat crying by the puppy's side, apologizing fervently, as he drew his last breath. I felt so angry that people could be so cruel. Ever since that day I had wondered why I had to see that. Why did I have to be a witness to such agonizing pain when there wasn't anything I could do to help him? And today, just like the puppy, I had been so cruelly struck by the hand of God, and he lay alone and dying, drawing his last breath like the puppy. As I drifted further into unconsciousness, I couldn't help but wonder if this was some sort of cosmic justice. Had I been chosen to experience the pain and helplessness I had felt for that poor puppy? It was a cruel irony, and I wished I could have done more for him, just as I wished I could have avoided this unfortunate predicament. The world grew dimmer, and my breathing became labored. The last thing I saw before succumbing to darkness was that same black puppy. He was there to comfort me in my final moments. After a long darkness, I opened my eyes and found myself in another world. I saw this scene as a witness, not a participant. In the ethereal realm of spirits and supernatural beings, an annual event of profound significance was about to unfold. It was the time for the Council of the Ancients, composed of ancient and wise beings from various dimensions, to convene and decide the fate of Earth's species. This unique assembly was tasked with determining which species should continue to inhabit the Earth and which should face extinction. The Council's discussions were intense, with strong arguments on both sides, but one thing remained consistent: humans were consistently on the brink of extinction, and the votes had never favored their survival. This year it seemed like the humans had finally run out of favor of the beings. The spirits of nature, animals, and even mythical creatures argued that humans had caused immeasurable harm to the Earth. Pollution, deforestation, and the relentless pursuit of progress had wreaked havoc on the planet. The majority of the council was convinced that Earth would be better off without humans. There were eloquent speeches from the advocates of nature, each compelling enough to sway the opinion of even the most neutral spirits. Even most humans voted for their race's extinction. They had lived horrible lives that ended in painful deaths. They didn't want to return to that cruel world anymore and chose to stay there in the ethereal realm. I felt a great pain in my heart realizing there was no way I could save humanity from extinction. I was not asked to vote. A large booming voice spoke, and now for the final vote. A hushed silence fell over the assembly. At that moment, a small black puppy entered the scene, its fur glistening like the night sky. I could not believe it. There was no way to be sure of this, but I just knew it was the same puppy who had been so mercilessly robbed of his precious life. Just as I thought of this, I felt a surge of energy. It was like the spirits of the puppy and myself were in some form of communion. I could see what the puppy was thinking. He was sad. His little heart burdened with the choice he had to make. From the clouds he could still see his mom and sister playing in the streets down below. Then he saw the blinding light that had appeared right before the car crashed into his ribs, crushing his small limbs as the blood filled up inside him. I could feel the puppy's pain and it was unbearable. I cried out bitterly, but no one heard me. Over my own agonizing screams, I could hear the mirthless laughter of the driver of the car. The puppy had heard it. As I lay in my pain knowing I was dying, I felt soft hands caressing my face, my body. I felt warm tears falling down on me. I could hear a small voice telling me over and over how sorry it was for my pain and how much it loved me. As the hands and the voice caressed my small furry body, I was finally able to see beyond the pain, and as I took my last breath I floated up to the heavens protected by a huge golden orb filled with love and warmth. Just as abruptly I was back to being myself. I was no longer with the puppy. I didn't know what he was thinking anymore. The puppy spoke, "I vote for humans to live," the crowd groaned loudly. And, the puppy continued, he turned to the bright light that hovered above the whole scene, "I want to return to Earth. Right now. In the same body that I had before." Suddenly the light spoke in the most gentle voice I had ever heard, "But you know you can never be with your family, child. You can't return to that world anymore." The puppy sighed, "I know," he said in a little voice. "But I can go back to another place," he said calmly. "All right then, if that's what you want," came the light's voice. "The voting for this year has concluded, and the decision is in favor of allowing humans to continue inhabiting the planet for another year. And as for you, my little boy," the voice said to the puppy, "I know where you want to go, but tell me anyway." And the light smiled. That was it. That was all I saw, because suddenly I was gaining consciousness. There was something warm, soft and wet rubbing against my temple where it had hit the rock. I remembered everything now and I groaned in excruciating pain. But slowly the lapping of the water against my head eased my pain and I was able to open my eyes again, and I saw it wasn't a leaf lapping against my head, it was the bright red tongue of the small black puppy I had just been with licking my head furiously. He started barking excitedly as I opened my eyes. He grabbed hold of my sleeve and began pulling. I got up, still dazed, unsure of whether I was alive or in heaven with the puppy. The latter made more sense. As I began walking, my senses started perking up. I followed the puppy. The storm was over now. I looked back to find I had been lying in a pool of water and would have surely drowned if the puppy hadn't woken me up, because right then a giant puddle of water completely submerged the small pit where my head had just been. I kept following the puppy. I was sure he knew the way back to safety. Along the path I found the bag of pine cones I had gathered earlier. They were still all there. I picked it back and somehow made it back home. This happened to me a couple of months ago and it was one of the strangest experiences of my life. I share this with you because I feel this message was for more than just myself. I named the puppy Lucky and we live a wonderfully happy life on our farm with my wife, my 3 kids, 2 cats, a cow, and 5 chickens. Lucky and I often go to the jungle together. He chases squirrels and butterflies as I gather more pine cones for incense, until the next vote at least.